You've been in the growth game for some time. I'm sure you remember back in the day when growth hacking was all the rage and,
Yeah.
marketers were trying to inject themselves into growth loops and try to get, more users into the system. And from those early days, I think that a lot of folks in growth really became attuned to data and using that in terms of their testing. However, as time's gone on, I feel like product growth and growth marketing has really matured to become the multidisciplinary, in fact, working very closely with product teams. So do you kind of agree with the evolution of that product growth angle? So becoming multidisciplinary, having people in multiple teams, having growth be a bit of a team sport. And then on top of that, as a follow-up, I'm going to assume you're going to say yes to that, is what do you think makes for a great growth team?
Yeah. First of all, 100%. I can totally remember the days when, growth hacking was the hottest term, all the books and blog posts and, tips and tricks on Twitter that were coming out. I remember that well. And I would put myself in the camp of people who, feel a little bit of cringe nowadays when I hear that term. Yeah, I think it comes from a place of like, I think a lot of growth people will now feel that you can't really hack growth. Like, yes, there's things you could do to like make, metrics swing or like get juices or like, make things spike quickly. But it comes from a place of having really solid foundations and thinking in first principles. And that's why, when I hear the term, I'm like, yes, but there's like something deeper underneath that,
Mhm.
that we need to unpack. Um, Definitely think though that the essence of that period of like being obsessed with growth hacking and startups and founders really trying to like, crack that strategy, to find and scale that next growth hack, like that's been captured in how growth is practiced today. I think it's captured really in the foundation being around data. And how do you leverage data? How do you measure things? How do you extract insights in a way that's scalable, and lends itself to strong execution and this really like rinse and repeat cycle of experimenting, measuring, ideating, uh, and moving quickly. And so now I would see that most growth teams that are successful are when they're very multidisciplinary. For example, a setup that I've always pushed for, and this goes back to my time at Credit Karma, is when we think about a pod, typically on engineering, you'll have a PM, a group of engineers, usually an EM, data scientist, design, etc. And the whole idea of setting up pods in that structure is so that you're getting everyone who has a decision making, like is part of that decision making process, to be in the same room, to be part of the same conversations. And what I've found is that actually adding a growth marketer or a growth person to the mix, can set that team up for even more success and to move even faster, uh, and to have even more impact. And so that was really popular at Credit Karma. I actually trialed it myself for the first time at Spotify, where I sort of like injected myself into a pod. And because it was so successful, it's something that I've brought with me today. And so now I instill that in a lot of the growth teams that I set up now, where I say like, hey, we should build this around like a common theme, common area, but also make sure all relevant functions and parties are there and are represented. And I would say that's been extremely successful, at Notion, where we now have, a growth marketer represented in most product groups now. And then to your second question, I think what makes a really strong, effective growth team, I would boil it down to really three areas. And I would say the first is a shared North Star. Second is really clear roles and responsibilities. And the third is adhering to really strong fundamentals. So for the first area, a strong North Star, this is really usually takes the form of like a key metric or a primary metric that the entire org, the entire team can lean on as this is what we're trying to achieve. And the reason this is so important is because when teams are executing, it's extremely easy to get lost in the hundreds, if not thousands of test options or variants or strategies that you could be building. And so having that very, very clear goal, or North Star, helps bring clarity and focus to the conversations where you can kind of ideate and converse about all these things, but at the end of the day, you have to prioritize and you have to be ruthless about it. And having that defined North Star is the best way to approach those conversations. Roles and responsibilities. I think when you're in a disciplinary function like growth, having really clear swim lanes across the team really helps to bring focus and allows everyone to be extremely effective by letting them lean on their strengths and what they do best, but also helping them to lean on their weaknesses where others might be able to fill those gaps. And then lastly, fundamentals, all those classic growth terms and sort of principles, but moving quickly, done is better than perfect. And something I really like to stress with my teams is test hygiene, to make sure that when we're thinking about experiment design, we're going back to the fundamentals, ensuring that, things are set up properly, that we're being thoughtful about what we're testing for and what we're measuring. And then, making sure we're executing well after that.